Hey, it's James Mulvaney today, back with another video on radio. And today I want to talk about the underdog, that is the radio producer. Now, radio producers are crucial. Fundamentally, the producer will sometimes be completely off air, e.g. you may never hear them speak on the radio, but more and more these days we're hearing radio producers kind of getting involved in part of the show, so they might be kind of like a second voice or a second opinion alongside the main presenter. But what does a radio producer do, and what's the point of having a radio producer? That's what I wanted to dive into today, and in a little bit we're also going to be talking to Shanae from Foundation.fm, who is a radio producer. She is their main producer. She focuses on creating a lot of their content output, so I really wanted to quiz her on what makes you a good producer and kind of get some insider tricks. So, sounds good? Let's get straight to today's video. So if you're new to this channel, my name is James Mulvaney. I'm an entrepreneur. I've been working in the radio industry for the last 15 years, helping lots of people launch radio stations and get results with their radio stations and podcasts. I'm founder of radio.co, podcast.co and matchmaker.fm, all doing really interesting things in the audio spaces, so you can go and check them out if you like. And also really passionate about helping people launch their radio careers and get established with online radio stations. Now, as I mentioned, radio producers, really crucial to the radio industry. So fundamentally, what does a producer do? They are responsible for things like drafting the contents of a show. So when you listen to the radio, you hear a presenter and they might be talking about specific things at different times of the show. It's normally the producer's job to say, okay, this is what the show is going to look like today. You know, say at 8 p.m. we're going to be doing, you know, whatever, we're going to be doing a news bulletin, or we're going to be talking about a local event, we're going to be talking about a festival or a concert or whatever it might be that you're talking about at that specific time. So it's really the producer's job first and foremost to dictate what is going to be the output of that show. But the involvement of a producer really is much more detailed than that. They might be pitching ideas for shows themselves, they might be coming up with ideas for competitions. It's really the creative input that goes into a radio show or running a radio station that the producer is mainly responsible for, and it can be a really interesting and varied job. So whenever you're listening to the radio and you might hear a crazy feature or some call-in thing or something that's going on within the show, it's quite often the producer who will have actually concepted that idea and come up with it, and it's the presenter or the host's job to then actually present that and kind of make it sound cool, make it sound exciting. It's really just their job to take the idea and actually turn it into reality. That's the difference between a radio presenter, or radio host, or on-air talent, or whatever you want to call them, and then the producer. But as I mentioned, the crossover between the two these days is a lot more common. I think in the old days, you'd quite often get a producer who was sat literally in another room behind another piece of glass, talking on like a talk back to the radio presenter in the studio, and they almost would be like completely separated. Nowadays, more than often, the producer presenter are sat in the same room together, in the same studio, just talking face to face, and quite often the producer, as I mentioned earlier, will actually be part of the show nowadays as well. The producer will often have meetings with station management. So for example, if the station management are trying to push a particular artist, or you know, they're running a big competition, or they're running having issues with a certain type of advertiser or whatever, the producer will ultimately feed that information back into the show, so making sure that the output of the show that they're responsible for, or the shows that they're responsible for, are kind of in line with what the management are trying to achieve in terms of the business model of that radio station. So again, really, really important. Obviously, if you've got a sponsor who's coming in saying, look, we're supporting this show, you need to make sure that the content of the show is really in line with what the sponsor is trying to achieve as well. So again, producer's job sometimes is to link the commercial aspects of the radio station to the kind of the creativity, the fun aspects, what you want to hear as a listener, and even sometimes the music itself as well. The other thing that producers spend a lot of their time doing these days that people perhaps might not consider is the behind the scenes stuff. So I'm talking about like editing. So perhaps the show has a podcast, or you're kind of clipping out sections of the best bits of the show for social media, or updating the social media channel while the show's actually going on. Again, a lot of these responsibilities will often fall down to the producer, or sometimes the assistant producer. Sometimes you might have an intern who's working alongside them, or someone who's more of a junior level. Again, just like with a lot of roles in different industries, producers, you can have executive producers who generally are responsible for multiple shows flows across the station, the producers who are working on each individual show, and things like assistant producers or assistants or tech ops or admins who are kind of more responsible for the individual components of a show itself. So different layers, and again, the bigger radio companies will have more layers of management. Smaller radio stations, you might have one producer who's sitting across multiple shows, and quite a lot of the time with small radio stations, the presenter as well is sometimes also the producer. So you might be producing your own show if you're a presenter or a host, which basically means you're kind of responsible for manning the ship, driving it forward, repairing it, doing everything that there is to do with the ship, which can again become quite involved. So what I thought I'd do now is talk to Shanae, who is a producer for Foundation.FM, a fabulous station that we work with in London. They are a predominantly female-led radio station, and we went and met them last summer. They've got a really cool setup down there. So here's what Shanae had to say about the role of a radio producer.
So my name is Shanae Brooks, and I'm a producer here at Foundation FM, the female-led radio station, which is on air 10 AM till 10 PM. Monday to Friday. So day to day, I, create content. I call myself the annoying or not cool auntie who's just in the room making sure everything goes to plan. I schedule, I book guests in, I'm just like everyone's like right hand really if they need anything, and a bit of everything really. My secret sauce is to just not stress too much. Like with radio, it's so fast paced that every day it's normal to stress, and really just take a step back. We're not saving lives. We're here to have fun. And I find in radio everything does fall into place, so just not to stress too much and be organised as much as you can, but don't over organise, because there's days I over organise and then everybody, you get a guest that cancels or something like that, and you're like, oh, there was me being over organised and now I don't need to do that anymore. But yeah, secret sauce, don't stress. My thing is to tell them, you kind of talk them through their first links, and then I kind of say, just act like you're talking to me. We're friends now, let's go through it together. And then after like the second link, third link, you usually find that people forget they're on radio and they are just having fun, so. Just good energy, and good energy doesn't always mean like the loudest or the funniest or the quickest. It's just being like fully yourself and knowing what it is that you want to achieve in your show. So if it is you want a show about just music knowledge, make sure you are the one that has the best music knowledge. Or if you just want to do a show where it's high energy, then come with that high energy, but just be like 100% yourself, and naturally you'll just fall into it and go with the flow, and like listeners will hear that, and that's what will make them engage. Advice would be, make sure to do like your research. Like don't just go to a radio station and be like, I want to be on air. Like, why do you want to be on air, and why do you want to be on that radio station? So even if it's only listening to one or two shows, find one that stands out to you, so then when you're then emailing those stations, the person reading will be like, oh, okay, they actually rate us, they don't just want to be on air. Because there's so many people that want to do radio, but you then ask them a question about radio and they're like, oh, I don't know. And it's like, but what are your reasons for wanting to do radio then? So I think definitely just do your research and really find what the reasons are why you want to do radio, and if you do want to do radio, what kind of radio do you want to do, and then go search out for that specific type. What I love is just how it is a safe space. Like sometimes you don't really realise that until you're having a conversation. And I was saying how many times we've come into work and do you want to cry or sad? And here you can do that and not be judged for it. Not saying I come in every day and cry, but you're not judged for it. We all just talk about, and if you have an issue here, it's not your issue, it's everyone's issue. Like, we'll figure it out together, so no one should stress. Like, we do that with like presenters, producers. There's no need. We're meant to be having fun in radio, so there's definitely that. So you can listen in on foundation.fm. You should also check out our Instagram because we're always telling you what's going on and what guests we have, and on our Twitter, and just stay in the loop to know what's happening. So yeah.
So I had a really great time chatting to foundation.fm last summer. Be sure to go and check them out. They're doing some really interesting things. And thanks for Shanae for talking through her role and giving us some tips and advice on what she does on a day-to-day basis. I think production and going into radio as a producer, fascinating. You know, there's some really interesting things you can do. It allows you to express yourself creatively and bring some really cool ideas to the table. Radio shows would not be as good without producers. I'm curious to know if you're a radio producer or if you're thinking about going to radio in a behind the scenes capacity. Let me know in the comments below. Or if you've got any tips for people who want to go into radio as a producer, you know, let me know in the comments. More videos like this coming soon, so remember to hit that like button if you enjoyed this, and also press subscribe and turn on your little notification bell for updates when I release videos just like this one. And I'll speak to you soon. Bye for now. What makes the difference between a successful radio station and a failed project? Well, after working with tens of thousands of broadcasters over the past 15 years and helping lots of people start their own radio stations, I see the same mistakes being made time and time again. So what I've done is I've put together a guide called the 5-Step Radio Startup Checklist, which really covers everything from concepting your radio station to marketing it. And this guide, I believe, will make the difference between you having a successful venture with longevity and creating something that doesn't quite hit the mark. Go and grab your copy now for free at jamesm.com/radio. Just enter your name and your email address and I'll send it over to you straight away. You're going to find it really useful. There's tons of information there which will help you with concepting and launching your brand and bringing it to market.